Morning, TK.
Hello, Peace.
Happy wine day.
Yeah.
Now, I'm pushing you a little bit today, I know that. I'm taking you out of your comfort zone with something a little less traditional. But
Feeling
actually
very uncomfortable.
very traditional at the same point. So we've got a little skin contact Sauvignon Blanc from Valentine wines. Our good friend Dominic, who's hopefully, now that Melbourne's back open, can work on his handicap. And what I love about this kind of wine is it does push people. It's not the kind of thing that a lot of people are familiar with. It's a really sort of classic old style way of making wine from parts of Europe, but here in the last 10-15 years people have been playing with skin contact a little bit more. So basically the short story with how this wine is made, it's basically white wine made like red wine. So it spends some time with its skins, which gives it some colour, but it also gives it texture and also what we call phenolic bitterness, which is just a fancy way for saying that acid thing at the back of the mouth that makes you go, and that comes from the skins. But that also gives it this really savoury character. I mean, what are your thoughts?
It's certainly not your new school Sauvignon Blanc, is it? Like there's a shitload going on, which makes it a little bit more palatable for a non-Sauvignon Blanc drinker. I think it's quite delicious. I think it'd hold up even better with a nice plate of food.
Yeah, and I think this is the thing with this style of wine. I hate using the term food wine because for me, all food should be served with wine, all wine should be served with food. That's kind of what you do. And if you use that European example, you go anywhere and you have some wine, there's even something as simple as an olive on the table or some bread or something, there's always something, whereas here we have a back deck and we get shit-faced. And it's like there's very much a cultural difference, and I use that term very loosely, but you know, the idea of us, you know, having food and wine, it's like, well, Doritos doesn't really count, but maybe it does.
Bag of chips
and some, or the good friends are coming around, we'll bring out the French onions. So it's not quite.
You've been to my house on Sunday.
No one's knocking French onion dip, I can tell you that. It's the first thing to go. But I think that idea of just some food is better than nothing, and it doesn't need too much. But I really like the sort of briny character this has, this kind of this saltiness in there, and there's definitely that lemon sort of pith, almost sort of preserved lemon sort of character. But it's just, I find this wine really interesting. It was the first time when I first tasted it, I was like, huh. And I kind of like wines that confuse me every now and then, as opposed to just that, I don't have to think about this, I'm just going to get pissed on the back deck.
Because there's not much passion fruit or cordial or anything in there.
And that's the thing, you
like
lose those sort of really high-tone classic Sauvignon Blanc characters. You end up with just a really interesting dry white wine.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, for non-Sauvignon Blanc drinkers, and there are a few people out there that just, you know, don't like that sort of bright, vibrant sort of Sauvignon, smells like, you know, lychees and passion fruit and not much else. This is not that. No. You know, this is definitely a lot more interesting, and I think this is the kind of wine you give to someone blind that have no idea what the hell it is.
Or put it in a wine match in a degustation, and you'd probably confuse the hell out of a few people, because it's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think the temperature is a big thing as well. You know, as this warms up in the glass, you start getting more of those sort of probably classic Sauvignon characters, but without it's not the jazz hands version. It's kind of just dialed back a little bit. There's a bit of restraint there, and I think that's a winemaking thing as well. I think Dom's done really well there. What are we going to eat with it?
I reckon a piece of fish, but maybe something that's got some fat in it, like a bit of salmon or ocean trout. But I think I know we've spoken before about a sauce that sort of ties it all together. And I reckon if we go to a classic butter sauce, we'll maybe use something like sorrel. Where you still get some bitterness through it. You could replace, if you can't get sorrel, replace it with rocket, broadleaf rocket, and really finely julienne it or chiffonade it, so it's super, super fine.
How good is the word chiffonade?
I know, it's pretty nice.
Great word.
It's a bit like that you used before.
I do.
I was a bit jealous.
It's actually cooler than that.
So what do we sell that for in the bottle shop? How much is that?
It's about $28 in the bottle shop. So, you know, I think it's a really interesting wine. For that price, I think for people that are getting into this style of wine, these ambers or skin contact wines, you know, it's a category that certainly the growth has been there for the last, I said, probably 5 or 10 years. But it's an interesting style of wine, and there's just a little bit more going on. There's a time and a place for all of these things. This is not necessarily the wine you're going to come home from work on a Monday afternoon and just neck a glass for medicinal purposes. But it's got a place.
Well, mate, if I went to your place and you poured me a glass of that, I would think I was drinking a really expensive glass of wine. Like you can tell it's all grown up. And it's there's, as you said before, there's a whole lot more going on in it than just a glass of wine.
I think that's interesting. You know, the fact that it is sort of grown up. I mean, there is sort of a lot of wines that we just don't have to think about. And this one, as I said, this makes you think a little bit in a good way. You know, it's not like, well, I'm thinking about it and I don't want it ever again. Like the more this warms up, the more I want that again. So. All right, so Yarra Valley Skin Contact Sauvignon Blanc with some ocean trout.
Ocean trout, butter sauce.
Butter sauce, sorrel.
Done.
That wins for me.
Happy days.
Cheers.
See you guys.